with you, of course, the objectives of the conference, the rationale behind the conference, who are the stakeholders that are involved, who are we targeting to be part of this conference, and of course, what is it that this conference will offer that's a bit different from some of the conferences that have taken place so far in the oil and gas sector. We've got a very short program with some short welcoming remarks from the chairperson of the Economic Association of Namibia, Mr. Jason Kasuto. That will be followed by the conference rationale and objectives by Ms. Nangula Uaandja, the Chief Executive Officer and Chairperson of the Board. And then we'll have a brief Q&A session where we'll allow all three conveners. Remember, this is a conference that's convened by the Economic Association of Namibia, HSF, as well as the NIPDB. And then, of course, we'll also have NAMCOR, as a strategic partner, is also being present here for the Q&A session. So those are the four that will take your questions a bit later on as well. And then closing off, we'll have the closing remarks by Dr. Clemens von Dodra from the Hanns Seidel Foundation, of course, the third partner who is convening this oil and gas conference 2023. So without wasting any time, please put your hands together for the chairperson of the board of the EAN, Mr. Jason Kasuto.
Very important members of the media, thank you for gracing us with your time and your presence. As Ricardo said, it means a lot. The fourth estate is actually briefed and very clear about, especially what Nangula will talk about, the objectives and the rationale behind what we think is a very important gathering of minds. The Economic Association of Namibia has got a very clear mandate, and that is really to be a catalyst in the socio-economic development of Namibia. And we do so not only through our research endeavors, but also through creating thought leadership platforms where dialogue becomes important, where solutions-oriented dialogue becomes even more important. The National Oil and Gas Conference that is slated for 16th and 17th of August forms part of our annual conference as the EAN. It's hosted once a year around very topical issues. Last year, if you may recall, we hosted the Green Hydrogen Conference. Now, oil and gas discoveries in Namibia have become quite a topical issue, as I've said, and by virtue of their potential to GDP and household incomes, becomes very important for us to be able to actually dialogue. Therefore, we need to dialogue. I know there's been talks about there have been similar platforms, etc. It's just not enough talking. We need to dialogue. As Namibians, of course, we know what our problems are: poverty, unemployment, and inequality. Therefore, it's important that we take both hands to grab opportunities where we can together talk and design a better future for Namibia. So, what we always say, it's important that we actually start to own our problems, but also own the process towards solving our problems. Therefore, if the oil and gas industry brings some promise, let's open it up and engage. Let's also not shy away from real conversations, such as the energy mix, transition, and shared infrastructure. Namibia has both a hydrocarbon or oil and gas endeavor to pursue, as well as a climate change endeavor to pursue. Both can actually coexist and be done. Towards conclusion, I just want to really also thank support from the industry for this conference. It has been astounding. Really thank you to those outside of the partners, NIPDB and HSF, but FNB and Total Energies for the tremendous support, and as well as many others. As I hand over to our collaborative partner, Nangula Uaandja, I would like to welcome you all here today and looking forward to seeing you at the conference. Thank you.
The main driver, of course, the core driver of the conference is the Economic Association of Namibia, as this is their annual conference. Last year, of course, the focus was on green hydrogen. Hence, we had the Green Hydrogen Conference last year. I think, in fact, the same dates as last year, 16th and 17th of August as well. And this year around, the focus is on oil and gas. So this is not really, just for clarity again, not a competing conference that's being set up that will take place annually, like some of the ones that are taking place with the private sector as well, and really has a different angle of focusing from more civil society perspective, and then collaborating, of course, with NIPDB. Hanns Seidel Foundation, as you are aware, has always been supporting programs that the Economic Association of Namibia has been implementing over the years. So that's what forms the three-party alliance that convened the conference. And of course, what can we do without NAMCOR's presence here? They are represented here, and they will also be part of the Q&A section. I'll bite from the floor if there are any questions for them a bit later on. I think the main thing also is to really understand the rationale and some of the objectives of this conference. There's plenty that has been said in the media also around oil and gas, but what are some of our focus areas, and what is the narrative that we want to drive for this conference? Please welcome the CEO and chairperson of the NIPDB, Nangula Uaandja.
Really excited to partner with the Economic Association of Namibia and with the Hanns Seidel Foundation for the second time this year. Last year we partnered to talk about green hydrogen, and this year we are partnering to talk about oil and gas. And I know that it has been indicated that these are topical issues. But before I go into those topical issues and the purpose of the conference, I would like to appreciate the Ministry of Energy, the Ministry of Mines and Energy, and especially the Minister who decided to support us on this conference. And it's not only supporting us. I think the Ministry of Mines and Energy has been going around the country doing quite a number of sessions talking to the people about oil and gas. They had a session, I think, in mid-May, talking about the local content policy, and they've been going around the country talking. So this is just to make sure that we complement their effort, and that as much as possible, we make sure that colleagues and Namibians, we are all informed about the new industry. So when we talk about oil and gas, I know that there was a very topical matter, I don't know if it was last year, when His Excellency said the oil is not ours, and we all were up in arms, the oil is ours. And I find it interesting sometimes when I think that Namibians, then sometimes we don't even have a sense of humor. Of course, the president, he's the one who wrote the Constitution. He's the one who chaired the Constituent Assembly that wrote the Constitution, and which says that all minerals and all assets that are minerals, oil, and so forth, whether they are in the ocean, whether they are under the ground, whether they are on the ground, they belong to the Namibian government, and they belong to the Namibian people. He knows that, and therefore for us to make a huge story about that one, it was quite interesting. So then what does that tell us? It tells us oil is not a matter of a joke. You see, we are not even laughing. So, okay, so it's a serious business. So oil and gas is a serious business. Let us come to the serious business. So there are definitely many, many questions to ask. So do we have sufficient oil? Will it be produced? When can it be produced? Somebody asked me a question recently and saying, can government accelerate the production of oil and gas? So many questions, so few answers, because maybe the answers are not with one person, they are in all of us. And I think that is why we were excited as the NIPDB when the Economic Association said, this year we would like our topic to be oil and gas. Are you with us again like you were with us last year? We are definitely with you. It's an exciting topic, it's a relevant topic, and we need to talk about that subject. So we are looking forward then to the 16th and the 17th that we are going to have this dialogue. And the dialogue is going to be joined by various parties. We have invited international participants, we have invited local participants. As it has been already mentioned, this is not about an annual oil and gas event. It is, the EAN has got an annual conference where they talk, it's about thought leadership, where they really talk about what is the most topical matter or issue that we have at hand that we would like our members that we would like civil society, that we would like the Namibian nation to deliberate on. And they have decided this year let it be oil and gas, and I think it is really at the right time. From what we are hearing, all of us, we are hearing that yes, oil has been found in the Namib Basin, on the Orange Basin of the outskirts of Namibia in the ocean, deep sea level. From what we are hearing, is that it looks like there is a lot of oil where it has been found. What we are hearing is that yes, getting that oil off the ocean, it might be a little bit of a challenge, but it could be possible. So that is what we are hearing. Now, what we are not hearing is, when is it coming? When will we hear that one? What we are being told is, give us 12, 18 months. When more appraisal wells have been drilled, then we will tell you more. But then we cannot wait until it is confirmed that, yes, we are starting to build, that we will then have conversations, because there is a lot of conversations to be had. What does that mean for Namibia? What does that mean for the current generation? What does it mean for the future generation? What does it mean for the governance? Who has done well in looking after their oil? Who has done not so well? What are the blessings that can come with this oil? What are the potential curses that can come with this oil? As Namibians, how do we need to organize ourselves? How can we make sure that with this oil we do not leave everything and focus on the oil and then maybe get the benefit, and one day it's not here, or one day it's no longer in demand, and therefore as a nation, then all of a sudden we go back to poverty level? How do we make sure that whatever we get from that oil is sustained? How do we make sure that we maximize the benefit for Namibia and for our people? How do we make sure that we do not only drill a well, get oil out, export it, and we do not benefit in the upstream and in the downstream and along all values in the chain? So how do we do that? That are many, many conversations. And I'm sure that every Namibian would like to be part of that conversation. Of course, we would love to be able to accommodate all 2-point-something million of us. We said 2.5, 2.8. I think they said this year or maybe early next year we will know where we are now. It has been a long time, so we don't know if we are now over 3 million, but let's leave that subject for another day. So there are so many questions, and we will all like to participate, and all of us have got views. Some of us are saying, government, please own the oil. Some of us saying, it's okay, government, as long as you make sure that you tax and you tax and you tax. Others are saying, no, government, tax, own, and do everything. Those oil companies, they must get zero of this oil of ours. Others are saying, please make sure that MSMEs are there. So many views. And yes, we will need wisdom, we will need guidance, we will need to listen to each other. And that is why we believe that this conference is necessary. So yes, it will have people that have had experience in oil and gas, but it will also have many Namibians who will be impacted by the development of this oil. So we are saying that about 40% will be what we call paid up. So we were inviting large companies internationally and otherwise that will be attending. And we said, if international participants are coming, then definitely we would like them to make financial contribution, because whenever they attend conferences, they do pay up for those conferences. However, 60% will be available for civil society and Namibians. Now it's like, me as a Namibian, how do I end? It's very, very challenging to make a decision as to which Namibian makes it if many of us are there. And therefore, yes, there will be a registration, and that registration will require you to kind of identify what is your interest and what is your contribution. Would like people that are in the room to make significant contribution. And if you are not in the room, of course, we are looking forward for your participation online. So yes, like we have mentioned, the 16th and the 17th, we are looking forward to hosting you. Will we be at Safari or Country Club? We will be at the Safari Hotel, and as indicated already, we know the organizers, the Economic Association of Namibia, the Namibia Investment Promotion and Development Board. We have got our partner Hanns Seidel Foundation, who is always standing in there for us. We have got the NAMCOR, who has decided to partner with us this year, and we have got the support of the Ministry of Mines and Energy. Like I said, the few topics I have mentioned are probably the tip of the iceberg. You probably have got many, many more questions, many, many more topics that you would like to be addressed, and we are therefore looking forward to having quite a good deliberation as part of this. We are looking forward to having our Right Honorable Prime Minister opening this event. We will also have keynote or speeches coming from like the Minister of Mines and Energy, as it has been indicated. We will invite key government leaders to be in the room, and I am so sure all of us are looking forward to having this conversation. Maybe the last point that I said, somebody asked me recently, can government do something to accelerate the development of oil, and when is it coming? So from our conversations, we are saying, okay, let us say that probably to be really just to kind of maintain more a level head, we say, let's say 2030 is the day that we say, deadline for us having oil out of the ground, let it be 2030. So whoever is saying vision 2030 is dead, maybe that was the vision 2030, that by 2030 we'll have oil. So there is a lot that is happening, and I'm telling you, I don't know who saw what when they were preparing vision 2030, but definitely something is going to happen in Namibia around 2030. Whether it is just before or there is definitely a lot coming, whether it is in green hydrogen, whether it is in oil and gas. So 2 questions I want to answer. Number 1 question is that question of when will we develop? Can government fast track? I said maybe government might fast track, but I think government and all of us, what we might be able to do is slow down the development process. And therefore that is what we need to be aware of. So yes, at this stage, the amount of money that is required in drilling wells, we know it's a significant amount of money. You and I would not want our government to spend that money to drill oil and to risk that money in oil that we don't know it is there when they were exploring all these years, and in oil that, yes, we don't know if it will be appraised correctly, and more money that will be required in the development. We would not like our government to spend that money. And therefore, at this stage, of course, the development itself is in the hands of the private companies that are drilling those wells. So then, what can we as government do? We can work with those companies, make sure that we've got a legislative policy that is very well balanced towards promoting investment, while at the same time making sure that Namibians get a fair share. And I'm sure that there are countries in the world that have accomplished that one, and we will be able to learn from them. What we can do is get so excited that we say we want everything, and therefore government is going to raise taxes to 100%, and whoever gets the oil gets 0. What we can do is get various stakeholders, groups that are coming up and having many conversations that are not done in a productive and engaging manner. That is what we can do to slow down. So if we want to make sure that we benefit from this one, then we need to engage, and that's why we are creating platforms like this. So that is the one question. The second question that gets asked is, last year we were promoting green hydrogen and clean and everything, and this year we're talking about oil and gas. Is that not something of a paradox? But what we are saying is that Africa has got energy poverty. And right now, the world is talking about transition. They are transitioning from something to something. We are transitioning from nothing to something. And yes, our contribution to climate, to pollution and dangerous climatic condition as Africa is like 0.00 something, and Namibia is even less. So if we are having people, like Jason has mentioned, what we are fighting in Namibia is poverty, what we are fighting in Namibia is inequality, what we are fighting in Namibia is unemployment. If we have got an industry that the world is demanding, that many people are supporting, and that industry has got the possibility of supporting the government in bringing an end to this challenge, then as Namibia, we will probably not be doing our duty as a government if we do not do that exploration, if we do not develop that asset for the benefit of our people. But we know that as Namibia, we are very committed to the environment. We have protected the environment in our constitution. We have got national determined contributions that we have made and that we have committed to. And this will not stand in the way of Namibia's commitment to the environment. So thank you very much, and I look forward to an engaging morning.
It's time for just to open up the platform. Of course, we call it a media launch. So the platform is yours now to ask some of those questions and answers that might not have been.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you. I came a bit late. I apologize for my slight late coming. But the particular text is just two questions directly. And this is one particularly for you, Mr. Van Dora, one for you, Madam Uaandja. Starting with you, Mr. Van Dora, in terms of Hanns Seidel's role, in terms of this conference coming up, what's the role going to be? Is it going to be a guidance kind of a role, participation looking at, because your slogan says in service of democracy, peace and development. Is it going to be in the development / peace democracy, or is it going to be the democracy peace / flowing into the development component? And then for you, Madam Uaandja, it's in terms of, like you mentioned, the paradox. Last year it was the renewable energy, the green component. Oh, apologies. I'm Dwight Klins from Eagle FM. Sorry. You mentioned the paradox. So there was the aspect of clean green energy last year. This year is oil and gas. Ultimately, in these two aspects, NIPDB has been promoting Namibia's economy across the board, from MSME level all the way up to industrial level. In terms for your organization, is the profile becoming a bit big in terms of promoting Namibia? I know that's one of the questions. Secondly, with regards to the oil and gas scenario, is this ultimately going to be a scenario of how Namibia can still maintain a form of ownership, even though we will be relying on countries coming from the advanced economies that know how to drill, that know how to deal with pollution matters, and that know how to deal ultimately with the further refining and processing of oil and gas products? Is this ultimately the scope that we can look at as Namibians in entirety? Those are my two questions. Thank you.
So all the links are manufactured at the same.
Maybe.
Frederico.
Maybe.
He would have done the same. Ask 3 questions. Do you have any more takers? Questions? Okay, I think maybe we can start with the first ones.
Good morning, everyone. As mentioned, my name is Dr. Clemens van Dora. I'm the resident representative of the Hanns Seidel Foundation, a German political foundation active in Namibia already since 1978, and actively promoting democracy, rule of law, good governance, development, etc., etc. And we've been a long-standing partner of the Economic Association of Namibia and many other civil society organizations, including IPPR, including NSC, including the Namibia Institute for Democracy, NID, and so we've been an active partner of civil society for many, many, many years. And we see it as our mandate to support civil society and the role civil society has to play as a watchdog, like you, like the media, like a sort of engager for public discussions and to contribute to the development of a nation. And that, also includes tough discussions, like also the one on oil and gas. There will be many people who will ask the question, but why do we need oil and gas? We want to move away from fossil fuels, but at the same time, this is a massive opportunity for Namibia, for the Namibian people, for the country to develop, and nobody has the right to actually put that in question. Namibia should and must have a right to develop, and our job, our mandate here is to do this, to support this process and to assist in providing platforms, in assisting our project partners that dialogue can happen and also difficult questions can be tackled. And one of them is to me, yes, the world wants to move away from fossil fuels. But the reality is we're not going to do this tomorrow. This will take us a long time to get there. In the meantime, we will be using fossil fuels. And here we see it as our role to support the process to make sure that it is beneficial for all Namibians, that it is the most environmental friendly possible, that there's a conducive environment, there's a good legislative framework, etc., etc. So at the end of the day, my personal vision or my hope would be for Namibia that Namibia would one day become the Norway of Africa, where if you look at the Norwegian case, every Norwegian owns in the, what's it called, the Sovereign Wealth Fund, has a stake of $200,000 in that fund. So it's really a wealthy nation, and every Norwegian actually participates in that wealth and has a share in it. And if we can achieve that, and if we can, our conference now can provide that platform for all Namibians to benefit one day from that, I mean, that would be the ultimate goal. And ultimately, yes, it would also mean that as an organization who is in the development space, we would make ourselves redundant, but then we did our job. And that's essentially also what this is for. And obviously, you know, there will be people asking questions, but why is the Hanns Seidel Foundation an oil and gas conference and so on? But it's exactly for the reasons I've just mentioned. Thank you.
I think just to add to that as well, especially in terms of the participation of the Hanns Seidel Foundation, they are also responsible for driving the publication of the foremost academic work in as far as environmental policy and regulation is concerned, which is the textbook that fourth-year students are using at the University of Namibia as far as environmental law is concerned. So their position really, and even when the conversations are taking place on the program, etc., is to look out for the environmental sustainable aspect and the protection of the environment, particularly on the regulatory and policy framework in terms of the extractive work that they'll be doing. That's why they are part of green hydrogen, and of course also now part of the oil and gas conference as well. I think there were three questions for you.
Yes. No, thank you very much. So I think two mainly questions that I got. One is, of course, the profile and the scale of promoting Namibia, and then, of course, the scope of Namibia and what we need to do. Looking at promoting Namibia, for us, maybe let me start. It's almost like, what an honor to be here at this moment in history of Namibia. There is a lot that is happening for Namibia. It's an exciting period for Namibia. People that did not used to know about Namibia, I think they know about Namibia. And it is because Namibia made headlines around the world, whether it is in terms of our green hydrogen potential, whether it is in terms of our oil and gas finding. It's actually an exciting period. And it is made it easier for us as the people that are promoting Namibia to knock on the doors and say, we want to talk about Namibia. Now, of course, as we promote Namibia, it's important that, Margaret, what did you tell me, the Dutch? The Dutch syndrome or the Dutch disease is that we should be careful, whether it is green hydrogen, whether it is oil and gas, we should be very careful that we're not caught into that. And as the NIPDB, yes, we are here to promote Namibia as a preferred investment destination. And when we got here, oil and gas and green hydrogen were not here. And we got here 2.5 years ago, just to tell you how fast things went or go. So when we went here, is what are we promoting for Namibia? We have identified sectors. Government has engaged, for example, the Harvard Growth Lab, just to look at Namibia, what do we have, what are we good at, and therefore we have got sectors. So yes, there is so much that, and the problem is when you are blessed with so much, sometimes you become indecisive because what do? You touch so many things. So we want to try and make sure that we are focused. And yes, that focus means that we have selected the 10 sectors, but we are mainly, when we talk about, we are really promoting 5, and it depends on the destination to which we are going. And the 5 is, of course, energy. And energy, when we talk about oil and gas and green hydrogen, we put it in energy. And then we've got mining. I think one does not need to talk about Namibia and mining. Mining, just because, I think the mining, people feel like, there is now a new girlfriend, and we, the people that have been here, have been forgotten. Mining has carried Namibia over the years, and mining will continue to carry us. And even in the energy transition, there are critical raw materials that are required. And most of them are minerals that are important, like lithium, cobalt, graphite, and so forth that Namibia has. And therefore, yes, that is an important sector. Agriculture, tourism, and then we're talking about services. And services is because we are looking about many young Namibians, whether they are from grade 12, whether they are from university, that need employment, and we believe that they can be taken up in the service industry. So yes, there is much to promote. We are focusing on those 5. There are many others, but if investors come and they've got other interests, then we'll be able to support them. So yes, it's a huge task. And every other day we want to grow the team to I don't know which figures, but there is only so much resources, and therefore, yes, we have to act wisely, and we need to make sure that we rely on council. Looking at the scope of Namibia, when you come with it now talking about oil and gas, there is so much that Namibia needs to consider. So when we talk about the paradox, there is net zero. When we say net zero, that the world is targeting 2050, it does not say a world without fossil fuel. It says net zero. Net zero means as you put in, you take out, and therefore we will have zero impact, negative impact on the environment. And therefore fossil fuel is not only here up to 2050, it will probably stay even even beyond 2050. And therefore what is important is therefore what are you doing to make sure that you are balancing the impact that your activities have on the environment. And I think that is one thing that we have signed up for. And then yes, on the learning perspective and the scope for Namibia, yes, the government has to consider many things. And it has been indicated here. Countries such as Norway, look at what they have done. And then go to countries such as Qatar, and look at countries such as UAE. What have they done with their oil? And you look at countries such as Guyana, it's a new country, it's a country that they just found recently. What did they do? But then there is, of course, other examples. So there is the government has to consider the partners that we have in oil exploration. Are they doing it in an environmental manner? So you need to consider the impact on the environment. From which country can we best learn when it comes from the environment? The ones that have developed their economy and they are able to give more to their people, from whom can we learn in that regard? From the ones that have got a good tax regime, from which country can we learn when it comes to that one and benefiting people? So there are a few topics that you can consider, and then going in the value chain. If you look in the value chain, which countries have benefited much into the value chain by having refineries and also having products that are used in the oil and gas. So there is a lot to learn, and therefore at this stage it's about doing a study that we are trying to work with the NAMCOR, which is the Institute or the Association of Oil Producers, to understand what is required and how can we collaborate to make sure that Namibian business people see the opportunities. So many things to consider, and that is why we want to have good dialogues and participation from all of us. Thank you.
And by the way, those countries that were mentioned will be represented here at the conference. I know we have a case study from Guyana and a number of others that will be at the conference. We have a question here at the back.
Thank you very much. My name is Franz. I work as a freelance. I think for me the question is to Ms. Nangula. It's not necessarily a pessimistic perspective, but my understanding and observation when it comes to oil and gas, this investment that we are bringing to the country is much led to foreign-driven investment that we are bringing to the country. And what I'm also observing is the negotiation of our delegation of our team in terms of share that we accrue from this investment are not, I would interpret it that it's not a fair deal to the nation. So I don't know the shareholding, the deal package in regard specific to the oil and gas, but because I'm asking this question informed by the deal structure when it comes to green hydrogen. one could not really say is a fair deal to the nation. So I'm trying now to evoke your thinking around the deal package that colleagues who are involved in agreeing to the terms and conditions that we are, as a nation, engaging ourselves, because this is a long-term investment. And if we don't have a very tight agreement right from the beginning, we lose the game. Thank you.
Thank you, Franz. That's a very good question. Do you have any more takers?
I actually forgot to ask this question for Mr. Kasuto. But it's actually a question for all three of you. But we can start with you first, Mr. Kasuto. If we look in terms of some of the takes that Madam Uaandja just mentioned to my question, ultimately looking at tax regimes, the frameworks, i.e. to do with legislation, to do with how can you best work with the resource. If we start from an economic perspective, what's the roadmap that Namibia should take? Means, should we update ourselves? Should we update with the best practice examples that the NIPDB is going to be observing? Madam Uaandja, in your particular take, how long can this process take predominantly? Because obviously we know that with oil and gas or with resources, there's an updating that you've continuously got to do, whether it be every 5 years or every 10 years. And then to you, Doctor, if we look at a scenario in terms of, you mentioned already, if the development side of things are done, then ultimately sort of like renders your role redundant. But development doesn't stop, obviously. So it means there's always going to be new things going to happen every time. From that particular perspective, what can you add with regards to not just oil and gas, but green hydrogen? And then there's obviously also the notion of nuclear. I want all three of you to see if you guys can say something on nuclear, because there has been some short developments coming through. I don't know if any of you saw, but there's a radical way coming from Denmark having to do with nuclear waste and how that actually also renders the current technologies of nuclear technology almost redundant. But also factor in AI, because there's now this whole drive for people to look at automation and AI. And also a particular take on what happens to the Namibian who is not part of the 1%, because all of us sitting here are part of the 1%, unfortunately.
To speak for yourself, Chief. I'm not part of the 1%.
No, we are. We went to university, so yes, we've got to identify that part, and we all have jobs, so we are technically not 1%. But yes.
The questions is quite, it's loaded.
I know.
And I think, I'm not sure, is it for this platform or is it for the conference?
No.
Because those sound more like conference questions that we need to engage at the conference. But we'll give an opportunity for each of the speakers to basically just touch on some of what you have raised. Do we have any more questions from the floor?
I'm from the Namibian Sun. The NIPDB recently, I'm sure the participation in, I want to take my questions to the participation in the Namibia and the Africa-Russia Summit. Just want to know your reactions. What was the reaction to, what is the interest with regards to Namibia? Were there any bids from any Russian companies to follow up on projects related to the NIPDB project pipeline? And then in terms of advising the Green Hydrogen Council in drafting formulation for green hydrogen, how active are you in that process, and what are some of the suggestions that you are bringing to the attention of Council? Thank you very much.
So Clare, we are at the oil and gas conference.
Okay, no, it's fine. It's fine. I can try and engage the CEO on the sidelines.
The green hydrogen, yes.
I can try and engage the CEO on the sidelines.
So
it's fine.
I think the Russian one, I think you can engage when you're after we're done with the presser. The green hydrogen one, I think perhaps maybe you can also perhaps that can be responded to. But is there any question related directly to the others?
If there's an opportunity to engage, why not allow us? Obviously, nothing controversial is being asked as far as NIPDB or the other partners are concerned. And if they are willing to answer, why not?
I don't have a problem answering.
Okay.
Probably going to be slow. I like to be very short and then we can talk.
No problem.
Maybe we take this from them.
Yeah. Perhaps let's start with that then. Let's start with that one first.
Okay, a lot of questions. So let me try and see how we can keep it short here. So talking about the fairness of the deal and negotiations, it's interesting because of course we have got people that are in the room representing us, and then there is views that we have and we think they should talk about this one and so on. So maybe let's talk about the deals with oil and gas, and then you have talked about green hydrogen briefly. So most of the deals with oil and gas today, those contracts were already signed quite a bit of time ago. I think let's understand that. So oil has been found today, but the companies that found oil today have been in Namibia for a bit of time. And therefore, we are not today in negotiations about those contracts. Those are contracts that have been signed already and they've been concluded. How the government can still impact this one, of course, we, the government, make laws and we make policies. And we can change laws and policies. As I have indicated earlier, we have to be careful not to become excited, and we make laws that will make us end up not getting the oil and gas because then they are too much to the extent of saying, okay, you want to nationalize oil and so on. Whether we nationalize or we don't nationalize, of course, it's a policy that government comes. But again, it is not always right that you enter into a contract and then when you find oil, you say, okay, you know what, let me change the contract. I think we need to be careful as a people on how can and what can we do now. But of course, government has to learn from other countries and say, where is it working for both the government and the operators? And what can we do to make sure that we get maximum benefit now that we know that there is oil, especially when it comes to tax regulations. And that is probably where the negotiation comes. It's government makes policy, government makes laws. Many times when government makes laws and policy, they don't need permission of anybody, but they consult. And in that consultation, it's because you want to do what is in the best interest of the nation. And during that consultation process, you know, I want to do what is in the best interest of the nation. But if I say I want 100% of the oil and nobody gets oil out of the ground because it's not feasible, that is probably no longer in the best interest of the nation. So somewhere there between 0 and 100% ownership and so forth, it's a place where it's in the benefit of the government. And like any other negotiation, there's a give and take. You sit and you listen and you hear. So when we talk about green hydrogen, the green hydrogen negotiation has been going over since around November 2021, after the announcement in COP. And the government has really engaged, of course, the Office of the Attorney General, and even international lawyers. So from where I sit, I believe that our people that were in that negotiation room have considered aspects and they have given the best that they could, given advice that they are getting from the Office of the Attorney General, from international lawyers that were present, and looking at the industry. And that is what we can consider. Now, of course, what do we want us? There is what the government wants, there is what the operator wants, there is what the Namibian people want, and you need to balance that. And I think at this stage, from where I'm sitting, I'm giving our people the benefit of the doubt that they have done whatever they can. Now, looking at the involvement, maybe I will just talk about the involvement of NIPDB since it's involved, since it's part of that one. So I am part of the 8-people Green Hydrogen Council that is headed by the Director General of the National Planning Commission, and we give our views there. And our views, whether it is in respect of private sector participation, whether it is in respect of the technical expertise that we have as a board, whether it is in terms of branding, whether it is in terms of strategy, we are part and parcel of that journey. And also we are represented on the green hydrogen technical team, and our members were part of the room where the negotiations did happen. So we were part of that journey, and we have read the documentation, we have given our views, and therefore we are part and parcel of that agreement that has been signed, if I can put it that way. Looking at the other questions that were asked, of course, the timeline, for example, development and what we do. Yes, we are very much engaged with the private sector. So we are here to support investors, and whether the two companies or the Total Energies and Shell, we engage with them to understand where are we, what is happening, where are we headed, and we are getting that feedback. And when we tell you, for example, let's say we think about 2030, just to be conservative, it is from the conversations that we are having with those companies and the conversations that we are having with government. And then, of course, the studies that need to be done, we operate with NAMCOR, or we will cooperate with NAMCOR to do a study that need to be done to understand the baseline and to look at, after that baseline study is done, which skills do we not have that we will need to bring into Namibia? Which skills do we not have that we will need to start building up today, so that when the oil is here and even as the construction begins, we will make sure that Namibian nationals have got an opportunity to participate. And that's why we are playing close to the industry to understand the need and to make sure that as we work with the rest of government, we are giving that views as to what needs to be done. Then yes, after you do a baseline study, we will learn from others as to when and how often do you need to review to understand whether you are making progress in the case of participation in the value chain. So I think that answers many questions. With regard to the Russia-Africa summit, I believe that it was a very, very good summit. We had quite a number of meetings as NIPDB with potential investors. We believe that some of those leads that will help us to see investors coming through. We did not take specific projects saying, here is a project investor, do you want to come into this project? But we met people that operate in certain industries, and we are asking them, would you like to come and set up operations in Namibia for Namibia of Africa? And we had very good conversations. After we have given our report, of course, the delegation went under the leadership of the Vice President. It will be up to the Vice President to finalize that report. When that report is done, we will be available to freely share more details about our participation and what came out. Thank you very much.
It's a very good question also around what I'm summarizing with what you want to understand is what is the economic opportunity for Namibia. And you touched on issues like the tax regime and so on. I think that, a number of industries, we just learned also this morning, oil and gas included, is quite heavily, if I may put it, taxed in the country. If you now take everything, the royalties, etc., and then you look at the full portion, it's quite a significant portion. But these sectors, in our view, grow from, Economic Association discussions, grow in efficiencies over years. And that's why you'd find in certain mineral sectors, there was a town down south, it employed 10,000 people once, now it employs 3,000 people. So as technologies increase, efficiencies increase, so investment sometimes doesn't translate to what you would think is a great job multiplier, right? So yes, tax bracket, great, money goes to the fiscus and hopefully you can generate enough for impact to really be felt by the people. But the real question should be, how do we ensure that we're going to maintain as much value locally as possible? Now, again, I make a comparison to other industries that have been here for, let's say, 90 years. Up to today, they are mostly serviced by outside entities. There was no conference 90 years ago or 60 years ago, whenever they were setting up. And I think that's the power of these type of dialogues, because we didn't, as Nangula was saying, we didn't sit down to say, what are the skills and support services that are required for this particular sector so that we can retain as much value in country. Government will always be there and play a very significant role, but it's important that from a procurement point of view, we are able to really meaningfully participate as Namibians. And then from a skills point of view, these skills in some of these sectors are very exportable also. So you'll have built a talent pool that you can also work outside and earn some foreign currency that comes back as remittance. So the benefits really lie in the value that we're able to maintain. And I suppose the strong, I don't want to sound controversial, but the strong monitoring locally to avoid tax flight and all of these things, so that we make sure that we're actually retaining as much value locally as possible.
We've got a question here. Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Justicia Shipena from Eagle FM and The Villager. The question I have would go to Ms. Uaandja. You're speaking about the paradox, so I just wanted to find out, should Namibia not be concerned when it comes to international organizations pressuring countries to go or choose cleaner alternatives, and also in regards to Namibia being a party to the Paris agreements, should we not be concerned about these obligations, seeing that Namibia is having the conversation that oil is not a thing of the past? And then for Mr. Kasuto, I just wanted to get your view in terms of the time frame when it comes to oil production for Namibia. What are your views on that when it comes to the economic benefits?
Can I actually, I still wanted to also ask the question from the gentleman earlier, as well as green hydrogen is, excuse me, is coinciding at the moment. It's actually very beneficial in many ways, because also, maybe Nangula already mentioned that, it took much longer to strike the deal between Hythen and the Namibian government. And both parties actually lawyered up with international law firms specializing in the field of energy. And the learning curve for everyone was significant. And that learning curve, having learned from the green hydrogen sphere now, actually helps now also to engage in future engagements also in the oil and gas industry. I think so that's something also, where actually there is a cross-pollination, so to say, for different industries, and which ultimately will help also for the development of Namibia and for the benefit of Namibians. I think that's crucial also to mention here. And that is, I think, where we can see also then a positive trajectory. Yes, there are many risks, but that's exactly why we have this conference and provide platforms like these to engage them, to identify them, to identify people who can contribute to solutions, and then also to help developing a good, sound legislative framework to the benefit of the country, of the people, and to move forward in a positive way.
Yeah, so in terms of the time frame, I mean, that's a very difficult question to answer from my end. I think that's the purpose also in part of the conference. We had discussions this morning with the association, NAMCOR, and with NIPDB colleagues. We are starting to think around perhaps having a masterclass sort of breakaway room where they also take the Namibian nation through the process, so that questions like that can also be addressed, because every IOC or international, every company would have its own, what I call a work program, which is not made public in Namibia, but that would be attached to a timeline different from others. So I think, again, it's a conference issue, and please come with those questions to that platform.
I think one of the good things, of course, also is the conversation allows us, I think particularly if you look at the obligations that we have internationally, our international legal order is a modus system. So our obligation is the moment we have signed an international treaty, we are supposed to locally enforce them. Everything that is happening in the oil and gas sector so far, and I think the good thing is also We have very strong acts and laws that deal with the issues around environmental impact. For Environmental Management Act of 2007 and a number of other legislative frameworks that have been put in place to make sure that the kind of damage that's unacceptable according to international standards does not happen. So in as far as that is concerned, I think we're in a safe place. And that's why when you have the likes of HSF that are also impartial to a certain respect in as far as their work is concerned, are part and parcel of planning and organizing a conference of this nature so that we make sure that those aspects around environmental sustainability are always part of the discussion when we're talking about this. The other thing, of course, also, I think the last thing I just wanted to add is, if you look at these agreements that are being signed and the fact that we're having these sort of engagements, if you look at, for example, what Hyphen did 2 weeks ago, they launched their socio-economic development framework. We've never had in the history of agreements at that level where there are requirements in terms of socio-economic development impact, very detailed. Say, listen, you need to employ 90% Namibians, even during feasibility. 20% of those must be young people. We want to see periodic reports on this, plus local procurement as well. Telling a private company to say, listen, we need a certain amount of local procurement from the regions and from the country before it goes out internationally. So some of these things are groundbreaking in many respects in terms of how the deals have been structured. And that's the reason why we need to continue having this conversation. That's why NAMCOR is also here, because they are also part of that deal infrastructure and going forward in as far as our extractive industry is concerned. And don't forget, of course, the several well fund conversation that's going on and a number of other acts that will enable Namibians to directly benefit from the industry going forward. On that note, thank you so much. We'll arrange.
Let me just quickly answer a question.
Okay.
Yeah, so briefly, I know we definitely run out of time. So I think your question, there's a simple answer to that. Number one, Namibia is not contravening anything that we have committed to. So the government of Namibia, whether it is in terms of the Paris Agreement, we have made our national determined contribution to the environment. And we are living up to that one, and we are 100% committed to the environment which we have protected in our constitution. We have since then attended COP26, COP27. We are going to attend COP28 that will happen in UAE in November, December, and therefore the government and the Namibian people are committed to the environment. Regards to any international organization where we are members, we are fully participating and committed to that international membership, and there is nothing that we have sat and said, oh, you know what, we are retracting anything whatsoever. We have been exploring oil for many years now. We are now just at a place where we have found the oil. And hopefully, if we were exploring for all of those years, it's with the intention that if it's found, we will develop it. So there is nothing that Namibia has done at all to go against anything that we have ever committed or to with respect to the environment, and there is no organization to which we are members that is in disagreement with us in any form whatsoever. So I would just like to provide that clarity. Thank you.
And adding to that, actually, you don't need to switch off the microphone, your recording device yet, is also, I mean, the funds coming in and the money availed to the government actually also empowers the government to do things they weren't able to do before. Giving you one concrete example, Namibia has lost about a quarter of its forests cover in the northeastern part of Namibia since 1990. And right now, the Namibian government does not have the money to start a massive reforestation, afforestation program. Now, with projects like the oil and gas coming up now, with the green hydrogen coming up, now government will have funds available to actually start exactly that, to look at additional programs, additional ideas to help to mitigate the impacts of the climate change, to support local biodiversity development, and therefore also to sustain the livelihoods of the people on the ground in the communities, and to assist with that as well, which right now is a difficult challenge because government doesn't always have the funds for that.
I think that concludes. I think that brings us to the